And let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to you all, wherever you're joining us from all across the length and breadth of Guyana. And of course, those that are not online, but listening to us through the radio, welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, we invited our Madam Bibi Shadick as a GECOM Commissioner here tonight because she is one of the faces we have not been talking to during that 5 months, that 5 nightmarish months that Guyana went through. Of course, we spoke to other commissioners from both sides of the divide, but here is a fresh perspective. Well, a different perspective, not fresh, a different perspective of how these elections went down. And one of the reasons why we thought we'd invite Ms. Shadick here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is because now we are seeing some of the actors, some of the players, some of the key persons, their names are now popping up in the news media. Police are charging some, action is being taken. And all of a sudden, Leonard, my co-host, I want to remind you, all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, the weirdest twist that seems to be happening is every time the police touch a criminal, or every time the police go to investigate whether a crime has been committed, those people who are backing some of these names, they forget the phrase, fraud is fraud. Now it's about race. Now it's about something or the other, except fraud is fraud. Well, I want to go down on record in room 592, and I would like to see all those who held this country at ransom for 5 months, caused us to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in vain and wastage, must be held accountable. And Ms. Bibi Shadick, welcome once again. And let me ask you first, ma'am, I don't know whether you had a look at the laws from this perspective, but elections fraud is akin to one of the gravest crimes that can be committed in the country, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I don't know why you people keep calling it fraud. I really don't know why you all keep calling it fraud. Because it was a downright attempt to steal. And to my mind, that is akin to treason. Some of the acts were downright treasonous.
Great, great. So, may I ask you, I mean, we haven't heard you speak about it before, but if you can take us through some of the moments, and I would really like to take your mind back to the night or that day when Mingo did that so-called declaration. I think you guys were in a meeting at the commission, and based on what we have heard, the Canadian High Commission and others might have come tapping at the door or telling you that this man is making a declaration. If you could take us back to then, and what would have been going through your mind, both as an individual as well as a commissioner, and of course, can't ignore the fact that you are an attorney at law. If you can take us back through some of those steps, what went through your mind and what was your reaction?
Well, actually, the drama didn't start on the 4th. That you're talking about, that incident, is the 4th of March. The drama didn't start then. The drama started on the 3rd, on the morning after the election, because that night they had started to do the evacuation, and then they were suddenly tired, and then they would continue, and then Mingo ostensibly got sick, and I stood up and saw them fetching down and that kind of thing, and you know, people were milling around and asking questions, and they were all this, and so that was the drama. And then when Mingo did come back on that morning, and then he started to read from this spreadsheet. I was sitting in the room downstairs in his office, and all his observers were there, all the foreign diplomats were there, everybody, and he started to read, and I kept asking him 4 questions, and you know very well I was a GECOM commissioner asking him these questions. Where are your statements of hold? He said, they're here. I said, so why aren't you reading from them? And if you're going to read from the spreadsheet, why don't you hold the statement of hold up? Why? Because they had a overhead projector and so on. And he kept looking all around like a, you know, somebody who's looking for help from somewhere. But it was interesting that all during that time, when that was going on, Roxanne Myers was standing at the back of the room like a soldier. She didn't sit. She was standing there. And this room has glass, and Mr. Mingo kept glancing outside, probably looking for who has to come to help him. Until, out of sheer exasperation, when he could not answer questions and couldn't do what he was, he asked for an adjournment kind of, and he left. And then he returned with the CEO, and he returned with the chairman. And then they had this sort of discussion. During the day of the 3rd and the morning of the 4th, the commissioners and the chairman were sitting on the upper flat at a corner where they call the commission's court. And we were looking at all the SOPs, and we had done all the regions, and we were doing region 4. We had done all the regions, and there were some region 4 ones there. What was happening is that we were certifying that they were valid, looking for the security features and so on. And then 2 commissioners were initialing, and I was noting in a book the numbers of the SOPs so that we could match to make sure that what was sent out was what came back. You know, all of these we were. And then there were the people there who were scanning and then giving us a copy. We reached the stage on the morning of the 4th where we had only about half of the 400 and something of Region 4 SOPs to do. Right. And that's when we started to hear about bomb scares and all kinds of things happened. You know, there are so many things that happened during a short period of time that day that sometimes when I sit and think about, I say, wait, was it one day that all of these things happened? It is one day that all of it happened.
Correct.
But we had started, the CEO came with an issue that we had to meet as a commission. And so because there were staff there, we were sitting in the corner, they said, let's go to one of the rooms. So we went to one of the rooms, which is overlooking the balcony that Mingo officially stood at. But prior to that, he had sought to make a declaration downstairs in the room. And he was, you know, drowned out and stuff. So he came up. And while we were in that room, there was Roxanne Myers saying that she didn't want the meeting to happen in this building. She wanted us to go to GECOM headquarters to have the meeting. So we were supposed to leave all of this. Yes. And so they could do whatever they want. So we refused. We said, why? Nobody could, you know, there was a door, but we didn't close the door. We were sitting away from the door. We weren't opposite the door, but somebody could have seen in there. Yeah. It's a big room. And we were sitting and discussing, and we hearing all these noises outside. And what I saw was the Canadian High Commissioner stand at the door. She knocked at an open door and said, Chair, look, you know, something, and to see. Right. That's all the lady did. She didn't come into the room. She did not bombard anybody. And we got up because there was so much noise happening. And we came out. I came out. I said to the chair, as we were walking out, you need to stop this now. You are chairman, you need to take charge. And she walked in front of me. I walked behind her. I was holding her handbag. And I thought she was going to that balcony to stop Mingo. In fact, she went up those stairs and passed Mr. Mingo and went onto the floor. And her phone, she had her phone in her hand into her ear. I had her bag with me. I wasn't allowed to go up the stairs because, you know, all these police were standing there. Right. Mingo did his thing and went. And that was the last I saw of the chair. I had her bag with me, wow. And then suddenly a policewoman asked me to give her the bag. I said, no, this is the chairman's bag, and she would have to ask me for it. And then this young man who, I think he was a presidential guard, but he had always been stationed there since the chairman was appointed. And he came, so I know he was her guard. And I gave him back and he went. And for hours, I mean, there was so much that went on after that. I went to doors and knocked and shouted for not a word for hours. And I sat down until dark, until dusk, when the building was being cleared and everybody was being sent out and so on. And I saw her come down and walk. That was to my mind an infamous thing. But
Yes.
Mr. Mingo made that declaration, and nobody seemed to have said anything. But then the court intervened, and
Yes.
so Mingo, that had to be set aside, and he had. So then on the 13th, he went and he continued his thing. He started to do it at Ashman's, but then the CEO and whatever they did, and they made a decision. But you see, elections management have to do with the chief elections officer.
Right.
The
Right.
elections commission are policy makers, and elections commission only look at the thing. So we're not supposed to get into the day to day and the minute to minute and so on. But we did. We were forced to do certain things.
Well, pardon me. I was going to ask you that because after the court, after Madam Roxanne George said that, look, you got to go and you got to comply with 84.1 and 84.2, and there's no other way around it. You got to comply. And at that stage, I would have thought, we would have thought, you were the expertise in the room. We from the outset, we would have thought at that stage, it opened the door for the chairman and the commission to be assertive and say, this is what the court wants, get it done.
But part of that is what happened in that room when we said the court said you are to do this. And the court, this was the 13th morning after the court had ruled. The court said you are to do this. We were all in the room now and waiting for him to do what the court asked. And I was reading from the court judgment, and that you are supposed to, and said, yes, he was there. He knows what the court said. So I said, yes. So continued to do it. And he still kept doing this thing. And what he was doing was, as the number he was reading out, somebody was typing it and it was going up on a screen. But that wasn't the SOP. So he wasn't doing what it said.
Of course.
So there was another thing happening. And then that's when the chairman came and said they would, whatever.
Right.
And that's when they repaired to Kingston.
But Ms. Shadick, at that stage, if we from the outsider's perspective, if we accept that, okay, the commission is a separate entity from the secretariat, and you ought not to interfere with the data, but at that stage, one would expect at the very least that the CEO owns and takes responsibility for everything, isn't it?
The CEO has to report to the commission, and the CEO has to get the approval of the commission to do what. The CEO, however, went rogue. The CEO, when he came and told us stuff and we went for a meeting or whatever it is, it was just, he was doing what, he was obeying the thing that he must talk to the commission. But when he went, he never necessarily did what the commission said to do. He never necessarily, he just went and did. And then that day when we left there, he picked up myself and says, pack these things in a box that were left that hadn't been checked yet. Put stuff in it and sealed up the box and left it there and left the instructions that nobody's opened this box and put. And I sat there with that box while all the story was going on all over the place. And that CEO sent one of the officers and said, I asked, where are you taking the box? He said, the CEO said to take it into a room for safekeeping. And that was the last I saw of the box with the rest of the SOPs.
Wow. And
the thing
as
is,
you're on that point,
that as far as I'm concerned, you were saying, that's why I'm saying, you were saying fraud. I am saying what it was a naked attempt to steal an election. That's what it was. And if we didn't have, we were not paying attention, and if we didn't have lawyers who were willing to go to court in a moment and to engage a judge and to get an order, the election would have been stolen. And today, we would have been the ones who are filing election petitions.
Correct. let me segue for a moment and ask you a legal question. You know, look, if if somebody steals something from you, steals a computer, takes it home, and the police goes and recover it, is it
That's
still an
larceny.
attempt to steal?
That's larceny.
Thank you.
If he took it away, it's
Mhm.
larceny. And as far as I'm concerned, the CEO should be charged for larceny with respect to the SOP. And he's supposed to
Great.
produce them.
Well, that's why I
That's
asked
my
that.
opinion.
Yes, yes. And Ms. Shadick, just before we go come forward on the subsequent events, just at that moment or in those couple of days, the documents, the poll books and the documents, especially from the East Coast area, where we understand the polling agents were told to not put the things in the box, but to put them in the envelopes and so forth. We have video and we've seen video that these things were taken into the building. But now
I
the CEO said
personally
later
saw
he was
that. I saw that with my own eyes. I saw the officers with these envelopes. Manzoor Nadir was sitting in that room, and Jennifer Westford was there. And two women were at two desks, and they were throwing these things on the floor. And, you know, and Manzoor was saying they're supposed to do something. These things were clearly marked. P2, you know,
Yeah.
all the numbers, the envelope numbers and
Mhm.
stuff. And they had them in black plastic bags, and they had them all host of stuff.
Yes.
And there are the videos, they do exist. And these videos do show very clearly who the people were who were handling these things. And so that's still there.
Correct.
In fact, I showed those videos at the commission meeting when they were discussing and saying things were missing. I said, why are you saying things were missing? Things were in the RO's office. I saw them. And if you all wanted, you would have seen them. And here are pictures and videos of them, of people handling them. And the
Correct.
CEO just kept saying, you know, he called for evidence, and five deputy returning officers gave statements that it's not true. But he never showed us the letters the deputy returning officers, the statements they made, and he never showed us, you know, who wrote any letter, you know, whatever it is. It wasn't shown to us, but he said that. And then he couldn't find these people to question them. This was a concerted attempt. This wasn't rigging. Rigging is what you do to get a result that you know that this wasn't. The election was fair. The elections were properly run. The elections were fair.
Right.
People went and voted. Their votes were in those ballot boxes. What they were trying to do was to steal the result. They wanted to make those results show that the APNU AFC had won the election. And everything they did, was to that.
Right. Right. Ms. Shadick, at what point did Ms. Bibi Shadick realize that they are making an all-out attempt to steal this election? At what point did you at some stage
From the
feel that
first day.
Lowenfield will still do the
From
right
the
thing?
first day, from the 3rd of March. Because there was never a time when an RO decided that he was going to stop the tabulation. Never in any region, and begin again in the morning. What would happen is that they would take shifts. He would have deputies who would continue, they would go and take a rest and come back. And it doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. Nobody should lock up anything in a room and let people go away. This is not something you do. People follow those boxes. People sat in those polling stations. People signed off. People witnessed them being put in boxes. People put seals on. People went into vehicles and followed those boxes up to the place where they went. People followed the DRO to the RO's office with the, you know, these things were in eyesight. You had, and the whole thing, and if people listen to Lowenfield's, what he was called briefing to all groups prior to the election, He outlined every single step that, there was this, all of that happened. Everything up to the RO's office happened. In every other region, the ROs did what they were supposed to. In every other region. In region 4, however, the RO decided he was tired. First, no, this thing started before. When I found out that the RO had not given letters to appoint counting agents for the PPP, the RO refused. The RO said, apparently, the chief scrutineer submitted counting agents' names to the CEO.
Yeah.
Because if we remember, the RO's office did not exist right at the beginning. They were looking for buildings and all of that. So it was a very late decision to use Ashman's building. And so that was set up very near. Usually all the other RO's offices had been up. People would be able to go do what they had to. So everything that the chief scrutineers of the parties had to do, they submitted to the CEO. CEO would have had to. Now the CEO submitted, because I think the PP submitted 4 names, 3 or 4 names, because what they were saying is they had East Bank, East Coast, and Georgetown, and whatever, and that they should have different counting agents, because it was big areas. The RO never issued the letter to appoint them, never gave the badges for them, even though he was spoken to.
Right.
And his excuse after the fact was that he didn't appoint them because they were only entitled to 1 counting agent. But if they were only entitled to 1, why didn't you contact them and tell them you're entitled to 1 and appoint 1?
Exactly.
But none was appointed. So when the time came to make the request for recount, which request was made, he didn't tell, because it's supposed to be, the request has to be made by a counting agent, and because he hadn't appointed any. So this whole plot started before election day, but that was that was Mingo,
right,
and whatever he was doing, and I don't think he was doing it on his own. I'm going to say here, in Room 590 on national television, that Mr. Mingo does not have the mental acuity and capacity to pull off the heist of an election in Ghana on his lonesome. Mr. Mingo, the follower of that, I'm sure. I don't know who his leaders are. I have suspicion.
Right.
I have suspicion. I don't know who his leaders are. But he doesn't have that capacity.
Right, right. I want to take you back to which would have probably been March the 3rd, when I think the PPP would have started to request for recount of certain areas, but APNO AFC had by then also said, well, okay, we want to recount for everything. And so they started, they requested recount for Region 6 and all of that.
They had started recounts in Regions 5 and 6, The recounts for 5 and 6 had started.
But at some stage that came to a stop.
Yeah, they were started.
Why did it stop?
They were started, and then there was something about not having a blank SOP, some technicality they said they had. But those things had been going on. But what was happening is that what was coming out is that they were, on that recount, they were finding that the PP were getting 2 and 3 and 4 and more votes than what were on the SOP. So they weren't very happy. So all kinds of little, but those were not big issues. Those were not significant things.
Right. But there is another point that I just want to quickly ask your opinion of. At that stage also, there was news that came out that the CEO, I believe it was Leonard, if you recall, there was a request for access to the container with the blank SOPs. And I think the PPPC objected vehemently that why would you need blank SOPs? The elections are done. Those things got to be sealed and must never be touched. Was the commission, as a commission, aware at that stage of
Actually,
an
we
attempt
were
to
in a
get
meeting.
to this container?
Actually, we were in the building at a meeting. And we knew that they were doing that.
Great.
And then what came to us, the CEO did not say they were going for blank SOP. The CEO came and told us they were going for ties, because when they would open the boxes, they had to have new ties, new plastic ties, and they were going in there to get the extra plastic ties. When the CEO came upstairs to the commission meeting, that is what he told the commission.
Great. And Ms. Shadick, I want to ask you about one other thing at that time that would have happened. The flash drive incident, if you recall. That same time when Mingo was, when he went off and they couldn't find, I think, and this guy had a laptop and the flash drive. But
when a pregnant lady said she was tired.
Yes. But later
pregnant
on.
Lady.
Yeah. Right. And
I wasn't in the building I wasn't in the building at that time. I was not in the building at that time. I had left. But Robeson Ben was in the building. And Robeson followed the man. Yes. And found him in the room and took video and so on.
And Commissioner...
But it was the same gentleman later on that became one or would have been appointed to be in the recount itself. Why didn't the commission put its foot down?
He is an employee of GECOM. Hold on. He is an employee of GECOM. He wasn't a temporary employee. He is a permanent employee of GECOM. And during the recount, what they did was use GECOM employees to do the job. So he was put, he is an employee of GECOM. The thing is, Mingo is a permanent employee of GECOM too. And as far as I know, his salary keeps paying, his salary paid in the bank.
But Ms. Shadick, my question is as follows: from an employer relationship, employment contract relationship, if you see an employee behaving inimical to his responsibilities, should that employee be allowed or be trusted further? And thus my question about Mr. Flash Drive. He
shouldn't. But listen to this. Listen to this. I need to explain to you the hierarchy and what GECOM. The commission of GECOM interviews and appoints a certain level of staff. The CEO, the DCO, those high-level managers. All the other employees, like Mingo and the one with the flash drive and all of them, are employed by the Secretariat. Because GECOM has over 300 employees. The commission doesn't employ all of those. The commission only employs what they term the yellow men. The senior, the top level, logistics officer, whatever. The others, we employ the IT manager, but we don't employ the other staff below that. That has to be done. That's how it was when I went to GECOM in 2015 September, and that's how it is. Right. So we can say that we observed this. But the thing is, if Lowenfield and his committee, his management, they have a management committee, they have a committee that meets, that thing. Right. If they meet and they say there is no proof that this man committed any wrong, because what he was in the seat. He was in the arrows thing. He had a computer belonging to GECOM. He was doing work that had to do with the arrow, whatever. So they will not see that as any infraction. I'll tell you another thing. After the Ashman's billing fiasco, we went to the commission and I said, this commission employed Roxanne Myers. And I am moving things that I saw and saying that Roxanne Myers needs to be relieved of her duties because of all kinds of things. The three other commissions on the other side say you don't have any proof of that. You don't have proof. Okay? I say she was instructing the police, and they say you don't have proof because what I saw, I ain't got no, they're talking like court of law.
Right.
But what we have is that while three of us sitting on one side are going to say certain things, three sitting on the other side are going to say something else, and it is left.
Right.
Chairman. And I'll tell you very honestly, I don't think the chairman has an appetite to dismiss anybody. That's how I look at it.
Right. Ms. Shadick, a question for you. While I understand what you have said, that is that the commission is a separate entity from the secretariat, and you don't get involved in the day-to-day. Guyanese would have
it's
seen
supervisory. We can ask questions, but we have to be guided by what is brought.
Right. Well, two things. One is that Guyanese would have seen Steve Sursvalley on the floor, getting involved, talking to the media, and he was a very energetic, a very different.
Well, we have a chairman who doesn't do that.
So on that note,
so it seems like. Go ahead, Leonard.
My apologies here. Commissioner, I want to ask you that back in the first couple of days, let's say the first 5 days.
I can't hear Leonard properly.
My apologies.
Your volume is low, Leonard.
Could you raise the volume, please? Yes. My apologies here. Commissioner, I want to ask you, because there was a lot of criticisms of the GECOM chair. I want to ask you, back in the first 5 days, did anything ever trigger your attention, or would have made you conclude that that she participated in this naked attempt to hijack these elections?
I didn't have anything that would let me think that, but I had doubts as to her wanting to stop what was happening. Now, there's a difference between being a party to something and standing up and looking at it happen and doing nothing. My opinion was that the chairman was seeing these things happening. They were being pointed out. Or in fact, I got angry many times and shouted at her and stuff. But she wasn't willing, as I'm saying, she does not have this appetite to confront. That is what I get out of it.
Could one make a conclusion
at no time, and I will say very clearly, at no time has the chairman of GECOM, the Honorable Retired Justice Claudette Singh, at no time has she violated laws.
Which brings me to another question.
There is inaction.
Which brings me to
another
question.
There is inaction. There is stepping aside. There is there is showing sympathy. There is all that. But there is no breaking of the law. She does not violate the law.
How would you respond to statements that persons would have said that there were many opportunities that she could have used, like the time between the court decisions that were delivered at the various levels of the court system, that she could have stepped in and says, let us bring an end to it. What would be some of your comments to some of the criticisms?
Could have, and I agree with that. I myself was very impatient, and I myself used to get irritated, and I myself used to use some very bad language, to tell the truth, in commissioner meetings. I myself was very unhappy at the way she made decisions and the length of time she took to do it and keep putting off and so on. The thing is that all of that is true. All of that is true. She could have, but she didn't. And that is my point. There are things that she could have done, but she didn't do. What she could have done on the 4th of March was to go out there and stop Mr. Mingo and say, stop this. Just as how she came into that room with the CEO to say, allow them to do this and whatever they have to do, she could have done, because she's the chairman of GECOM and she has that authority. But she didn't do it.
And which, of course, brings us to August the 2nd. A lot of people were left stunned at the sequence of events that has started on that day and then ended to a declarations and then the swearing in of President Irfan Ali. Were you surprised at the speed of things?
Speed?
Yes.
Was there, what do you mean? The declaration, the final
A
declaration?
lot of people were thinking that maybe there's another twist to this tale.
From when?
From the
From
day,
after the
yes,
recall?
yeah, because there were a lot of rumors going around
No,
that maybe there's
I,
going to be some resignations of 3 commissioners on one side or so, and then
Well, all of that we heard. All of that we heard. And all of that. But I'll tell you what. In my mind, the thing that played a great role in all of this is the US government's action of sanctions.
mhm.
There were people, we had 3 commissioners who were prepared to come and sit in that commission meeting and bring up all kinds of points and put off this thing for longer and longer and longer and longer. But then there was a stage where the chairman said, she kept saying, I have to do this today. And then she never did it that day. Then she would put it off to another day. And I always used to say, well, like, we are going to sit here forever because that, that's the feeling I was getting. And things could have been done faster. They weren't done. But during that couple of days, what happened that stunned people was that the whole thing happened in one day and they didn't expect it to have happened by accident.
Yeah, yes, indeed.
We
And
sat,
also,
we sat
go
there
ahead, go
and decided that we were not moving from here.
but did something happen? What I'm really trying to get at, because
Something happened, Gregory. Something happened. But that's not for me to say on national television.
interesting.
Okay.
Do you have any idea? Well, I can't ask the good commissioner, but I can ask you. We would have to take into account Freddie's column today. Do you have any idea what happened
Yes.
in that room, Yog?
What happened
Well,
in which room?
Leonard,
What happened in which room when she was locked away?
No. We talking about
no,
August the 2nd.
he's talking about August 1st, and well, he's talking about July 31st and August 2nd at the end of the court case and the sudden decision to move on and have a declaration.
The
speed at
sudden
which it
decision
happened,
only happened on the 2nd. It didn't happen before that.
Correct.
And what happened
Correct.
on the 2nd, I know what happened. But that's not something I'm to say in national television.
Well, then I have a question to
Richard.
ask you, good commissioner. What a lot of persons want to know why claimant Mingo, Kate Lowenfield, still on the job. Is the commissioner still live? The GECOM Commission, is it still live?
Actually, I think as we speak, I think the government has to replace one commissioner because Commissioner Ben resigned and I think very quickly now they're going to have a replacement. And so very quickly now the commission will have to meet because with all that is happening, I think the police have been asking for documents, for all kinds of stuff. And I think the commission will have to meet. But I'm hoping that this replacement happens very quickly. The commission has not met. And I think more particularly, they did not meet because there were so many death threats. After that, chairman, excuse me, after that, I'll call you back. Yeah, after that statement, after the declaration, because the chairman was threatened that if you swear in a PPP government, we will kill you. They also threatened to burn her property in Borby. There were specific threats. And so these threats remain for a good while. In fact, some of them still exist because with the arrest of Mingo and so on, you got some more things that are happening. But the chairman has been into the office. She has been into the office. She was there for this week, I think 2 or 3 days already. She was there today. And I think 3 of the commissioners, the 3 opposition commissioners now, went in to ask her what was going on. So I don't know, but we have not been called for a meeting. In fact, I speak to the chairman almost every day, and just to find out what is going on. There is no meeting called yet, but I think very soon
right.
we'll have to meet because there are things that have to be discussed and done.
You could go
Yes.
on and we come
Because
back.
one of the
I think
questions
the
I think,
CEO wants
Leonard,
to go and
that
leave.
lingers.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the questions that lingers is, of course, Leonard, Keith Lowenfield's eventual preparation of a report that complies with the chairman's directive,
Yeah.
Yes,
which
that's
everybody thought he would never comply. And so
Mr.
there was that
Lowenfield
turning
presented
point, I think, that
four different sets of numbers to the commission.
correct,
And I have said
correct.
in no uncertain terms that Mr. Lowenfield needs to be relieved of his duty.
would that be an item
And
on
I'm
the
hoping
agenda
that
for the
we
next
Now,
will.
meeting?
here is the
That is one of the first things we will discuss.
Okay.
Yes.
great. So in terms of Lowenfield and Mingo, they're both employees on the permanent thing. Can you
No,
now?
both are contract people, but they are permanent GECOM staff. They're not permanent establishment.
Okay.
Lowenfield is on a 3-year
Mhm.
contract. You know, they got these 3 contractual employees.
Yes.
In fact, all of GECOM staff are contractual. We don't have any permanent establishment like public servant people here.
Right.
But Lowenfield's contract is every 3 years. And Mingo, I don't know what the length of their contract is, but he's employed as a registration officer at Fort Wellington.
Mm-hmm. And I know I'm sorry to bring this up at this stage, but Leonard and I had a look at some of the numbers on Mr. Mingo's 1.7 million salary per month.
That's not
Mr.
his.
Lowenfield,
That's
sorry,
not
and
his
Mingo's
salary on the books,
800,000.
Oh,
That's
there's
not
some,
his salary on the books.
Okay.
there's something
His
off the
salary on the
books.
books is like less than $200,000. I don't know where those numbers have come from, but our information as
Right.
to salaries says his salaries is 200 and something thousand dollars per month. I don't know.
This would have been the returning officer, right?
No. As registration officer, that's his
CEO.
regular salary. As returning officer,
registration.
he had an extra so much per month. All returning officers had,
Okay.
I forget how much per month. But that was for a period.
Okay. Gotcha.
I think there was for 3 months or something.
Right. Right. Now, Ms. Shadick, in terms of today, now that both gentlemen are part of a matter in front of the court has not ruled whether they're guilty or not guilty.
No,
Can
the court
GECOM
has
take
not
action to
even-
relieve them of the
The
duty?
court has not even started a trial because what has happened
Right.
is that the DPP has taken over the charges. They were all private criminal charges, filed,
Mhm.
remember? Three
Right.
against Lowenfield and 1
Yeah.
against Mingo
Yes.
and Paula Lawrence. What has happened is
Mhm.
those charges have been taken over by the DPP, who has asked the police
Mhm.
to conduct an investigation. And I think she has given guidelines and instructions as to what she would like them to look for. I would hope
Okay.
so that she can know what charges. It might not be the same charges or the only charges that they're facing, because she may find a need to file additional charges. She may find a need to amend the charges. We don't know that.
Mhm.
That's the reason why they're doing this. And I'll tell you what, the investigation has only now started. Because those are not the only people that they have. They
Right.
have this
So
thing
Ms. Shadick,
was bigger than those people.
mm-hmm. So Ms. Shadick, the question here then, can they be relieved of their duties? And if you don't, wouldn't they be now in a position where they could
Interfere.
impact whatever evidence might be gathered against them?
Anybody who is employed can be relieved of their duties. They can be relieved of their duties for cause, legally. Now,
Right.
in the case of Lowenfield, who is employed by the commission itself, the 7-member commission, the 7-member commission can give him a letter of termination, can say a month's notice, because contracts are standard, a month's notice and terminate. And if Lowenfield feels aggrieved, then Lowenfield has a right, like every other citizen, to challenge his termination in a court of law. And a court of law can only award damages, but cannot tell the commission you have to employ the man. No court can tell you that you have an employee and you dismiss the man. He goes to court and they say you were wrong, but they can't tell you to re-employ him. They will say you have to pay him so much as termination, whatever. So at the end of that process, that the thing is that I feel very strongly that a lot of these people have to be taken out of the system. It's like a nest of that has been built that needs to be dismantled. There are good people there.
Ms. Shadick, pre-March 2nd, pre-March 3rd, 2020, did you get an inkling that the people within the Secretariat might be capable of what eventually happened?
I knew that from the day I went to GECOM, which was in September 2015. And from the date of the no confidence motion, when Lowenfield did what was the truth and went up there and said, we can have the elections in 3 months. And the PRO said the same thing. And then after that, the tune changed. And then there was all these machinations about house-to-house registration and bloated lists. And Lowenfield went to the High Court and is on video saying, bloated list, I don't know about that. I never told anybody. You know, the thing is that Lowenfield goes to that commission and he says all the right things. But Lowenfield goes and he does the other. And that has been my complaint from day one. We make decisions here, and those decisions are not carried out. And then you get all kinds of excuses as to why. And hence my saying, I knew things were wrong from the day I went to GECOM.
So the tail wagged the dog.
Commissioner.
I wanted to raise this point, Yoga, and if I may, Commissioner, the tail wagged the dog. Going forward, how does, let's assume that you remain there, that you remain a commissioner there. There's gonna have to be a lot of changes, I presume.
Oh, there will have to be. There will have to be. There will have to be, and there will have to be changes even before the next local government election.
And I want to bring you back to that particular day when the chief elections officer was sitting in the room, and then he claimed that there's a death threat, and he bolted from the room. What were some of your thoughts with him being an employee under the direction? He was not sitting?
He wasn't sitting in the room. No. He was in that room, and a decision was taken that after all the arguments, that he would be asked to make his report based on the recount figures. And so the chairman adjourned the meeting briefly to go and write him that, because we said give it to him in writing. She went to her office to get the letter typed, instructing him to prepare his report using the recount results. While that letter was being typed, before she could have come out with it, that is when he was outside. The meeting wasn't in session. We were sitting in the room, but we were waiting. It had been adjourned.
But why did the commission always deflect in terms of giving him 48 hours and those fantastic
again,
long
I
periods of time?
It was not the commission that was deflecting. You need to understand, and I keep telling you this. 3 people are sitting here and taking one position. 3 people are sitting there and taking a completely different position. The chairman, who has a casting vote and who has a strange habit of saying, I rule. I've listened to submissions because she was a judge. Because we are all making our arguments and she's supposed to listen to them and then make her casting vote because it's 3-3. She comes and she says, I rule. And I would always have to tell the scribe please record the chairman's ruling as her vote, because that's what it is. Decisions are not made by the commissioner by ruling. It is made by a vote and a majority vote. So, you know, that was because that's the legal and statutory thing that has to happen. But so it comes down to the chairman. And if the chairman gives them some more time, I mean, we can be angry. In fact, every one of those commission meetings, I used to come out angry. And so, but you know, that's what it is. You belong to a body, and the decision has not been made, and so it can be implemented.
Are you going to go back as commissioner?
So,
if I'm going back as commissioner?
Yes.
Well, I am still a commissioner. I haven't resigned. I can only, I will no longer be a commissioner when I resign. I don't know when that will be. It could be tomorrow. I'm not sure. But I still am a commissioner.
Yeah.
Great. Commissioner, with regards to the sanctions, did you have the feeling when the sanctions were first announced that the pack of cards might, the house of cards might now tumble?
That it might not tumble?
Were you surprised? No, that it, yeah. Were you surprised that they still held on, even though the sanctions were the first announcement of sanctions? Were you surprised?
No, I
that
wasn't, because knowing
that,
the people who they were dealing with, the people didn't believe. The people, after the sanctions were announced, they didn't believe. Because you see, this group of people, now this is not me as a commissioner, this is me as a politician. The people who were there egging and holding on were people who really believed that the United States and these other people were their friends, because you know what? They helped to put them there in 2003.
Yes.
They were getting that support. What they didn't understand is that the people let us come here, but they didn't tell us to come here and steal. So they thought that if you're a friend of mine, you're going to be a friend of mine, never mind what I do. And the thing is that always used to get me, because I'm this kind of person. I'm always amazed, never mind people do this all the time, that there are people who will deliberately look at you. They've just hit you in the face, and they're telling you that it was for your good. We are ruled, you know, we have done so much good for this country. We dismissed all 10,000 people, but it's because Guyana needed that to happen, that we have made lives better for people, that we have, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm always, and I always say to myself, why are you amazed? This is what the people do, they lie. But being a person who doesn't lie myself, I don't really expect people to lie all the time. But I don't think they believe. The thing is, if your parent tells you something, you don't think they're going to go through with it. You think, oh, they're bluffing. So they still thought it was a bluff.
Right. And Commissioner, there are two other incidents that I want to ask your comment on. One was when the Minister of Foreign Affairs, when she commandeered a part of the building there to have that meeting, that infamous meeting. What's your comment and what's your reflection of that incident?
That was a day I was ashamed to be a Guyanese person and to be recognized as such. The thing is that I don't know how they put that, and I'm going to say woman, I don't know how they put her as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, a diplomatic, you know, to head a diplomatic ministry. Oh, for God's sake, you need to have people who could use diplomacy to do what you do. This was not, this lady is no diplomat. And I think there were too many people who were telling her what to do.
Right.
She was told to go there and do that.
Correct.
And then she got a phone call, and she said, okay, I'm leaving now, and then she just walked out. You could have seen, like, She's a puppet. She was told to do this. She did it, and she doesn't have an apology to offer because she doesn't even understand what she did. I don't think she fully appreciates the damage she did to Guyana's image.
Right. And instrumental in that was that the person who took that phone to her was actually the deputy CEO.
Roxanne Myers. I don't call her DCO. I don't think she's DCO. I keep calling her Roxanne Myers. The thing is that that lady was the puppet master. That lady, and I'm telling you, from the day she was put there as the DCO of GECOM, she was put there for this reason.
Right.
That she failed is not for want of her trying.
Correct. Now, Vincent Alexander, one of
controlling the police. She was controlling the whole thing.
Right. So another one was, of course, Vincent Alexander would have been in room 592, and he would have made certain assertions. One was to say that the Canadian High Commission lied, that she barged into the room, to use his words. And two was that, he was the one that would have stopped fraud by Gokul Budu sometime in the past. And it was strange to see him standing up to say he stopped this in the past, but he said that the commission had no power to intervene with the secretariat in this latter stage.
Vincent likes to put out that he has powers, but the commission doesn't. And I'm saying here, Vincent lied. That lady never barged into any room. She knocked on the door. I said that when I started. She knocked on that door. She says, Madam Chair. And that was it. And she went away. She didn't stay there. She didn't stand up. She turned away. We came out. And Vincent is the one who wrote a long treatise to say why we should have a non-result and why we should nullify the elections and why we should have new elections. And he held on to that all the time. Right. And Vincent is the one who goes in there pontificating as if he's a lawyer. Because I think he said he did an LLM somewhere. I'm not sure. But Vincent would like to think, but there is a thing there that I've always looked at. He and Roxanne Myers are particularly close. So like, whatever it is passes, they sit near to each other at commission meetings because she attends. And she didn't even attend the commission meeting. The CEO should attend. She would only attend if the CEO is not there. But she sits there, she's there all the time because, and when I say she's puppet master, I think she was pulling the CEO strings as well.
The CEO was pulling the CEO.
was frequently in attendance of the meetings.
That's interesting.
Roxanne Myers was frequently at
every meeting.
Whoa.
He was never absent.
Okay. Commissioner, in terms of the commissioners, your fellow commissioners, and the chairman, in terms of let us say security for the chairman and vehicle for the chairman and vehicle and security for the CEO, is it a commission decision or is there some protocol that you follow to have?
For vehicles to be assigned to the for vehicles to be assigned?
Yes.
I think the chair makes a request for what the chair wants to go in or drive. I don't think this chairman, was particularly happy at climbing into a high vehicle, but in the first place. And secondly, those things don't have anything to do, don't come to the commission for decision. I mean, the purchase of a vehicle would come to us as spending, and if this is a vehicle for the chairman, we don't object because, like the chairman of the commission is a constitutional officer who is a powerful person. GECOM is the chairman can request who she wants as her secretary. She can request guards. She can request which vehicle she wants. She can request who to drive her. You know, that kind of thing. She has a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's like ministers going into
Right.
an office, they
Um,
choose their private agent. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. Commissioner, I want to ask you about the SOPs. Was there any decision that was made by the commission to not release SOPs?
No, there was never any such decision. In fact, we made a specific request for the SOPs to be produced to us.
And
I
what
know
happened?
that the chairman told us she wrote the CEO, and we never saw it.
I don't understand that.
So,
Pardon me,
yes,
dear.
some,
Because you see what the CEO keeps saying. You know, the devil can quote scriptures to suit himself. What the CEO keeps saying, and the law does say, when the presiding officer prepares these things, one of the SOPs is put in an envelope for the CEO. One is put in an envelope for the RO. One is given to each of the agents. Okay? So the agents, being the parties, will get it. The party agent, polling agents. The one goes to the DCO. When the DCO comes and collects the ballot boxes, he collects the envelope for the CEO, but the presiding officer has to go with him because the presiding officer is supposed to deliver by law the SOP to the CEO. But like in the case of Georgetown, when a presiding officer is coming from way up the Demerara River, physically it's not possible. So the RO, the DRO, the deputy returning officer, who collects the ballot box and transports, will bring that to the CEO. The CEO claims that all that come to him are his property. I have reminded him they are the property of the commission. They are given to you because of your position, but they are the property of the commission. But the CEO, it's like when the RO, when we sat with him, he said, those are my CEO, my SOPs. And the CEO says, those are my SOPs.
but he's a creature of the commission, of his employer.
They all are.
That
is why I'm saying they have disobeyed so many laws that it isn't funny.
did the chairman?
So would those SOPs ever see the light of day? SOPs ever see the light of day?
I sincerely hope so, because I think the police are going to be instructed to go and search and get them.
But to come back
I think the police have issued a request to be given them.
Commissioner, to come back to this whole thing here, I'm trying to, because we're trying to get some answers here. You were getting some sides of the story, and I don't think we were very clear.
If I have answers, I'll give you. But,
I know, but I'm going to ask. So here you have a commission that has 6 commissioners and the chairperson, and we're talking to a creature of that commission. We're telling that person, and he is saying that it belongs to him. Why wasn't a ruling or a decision or a directive issued or asked of the chair to deliver to Kate Lowenfield to have him deliver that?
Hold on. Up to this afternoon, I spoke to the chairman, and she told me again she had written a letter to the CEO asking him to produce the SOPs to the commission. In fact, I think the police have written to the chairman to ask her for the SOPs. She, I think, told the police that she didn't have those in her possession, but she gave them a letter, I think. I'm not sure that she had written to the CEO for him to get.
York, this
Leonard,
is interesting.
This is.
I'm a little blown away.
I think the police have collected from the chairman a lot of documents that she has in her possession. Because they asked her for stuff, and they also have a list that they have asked the CEO to produce.
And if I may divert here a little,
And just for the sake,
Yog, I want to put you in
go
a
on.
spot here. I'm not going to ask the commissioner, the good commissioner, this, but you were part of a management system in a big company, and there was a board of directors. What would you have done? What would have been the standard operating procedures had somebody like Lowenfield, as a creature of that company, refused to do something like that?
Well, Leonard, forget the consequence of his refusal. Any employee, and as an attorney at law, the commission will correct me and add to what I'm saying, maybe, hopefully. But any employee, if you have something in your desk at work, as long as it is in the employee's premises, it is subject to the protocols of employment. You cannot have personal property in the employer's place of work. Over to you, attorney.
Hold on. You can have personal property in your own, but you cannot claim to have the property of your office in your home.
Employer, right.
The thing is,
Correct.
however, and Leonard, I need you to get that I keep saying this. Decisions of the commission are by vote. And whenever there is a majority vote or a unanimous vote, decisions are either unanimous or by majority vote. Now, if there is a majority vote, whatever is decided gets done. But you have to have a majority vote. To sanction Lowenfield, to dismiss Lowenfield, to do whatever has to be done, has to be by a vote of the commission. Now, I know for a fact that the three commissioners who are on the other side will not vote to do anything to Lowenfield. Because in fact, when we are asking questions of the CEO, people like one of them are saying, you don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that. You know, you could see that they're trying to control him.
Yes.
The thing is that
Correct.
for that to happen, the position we are taking has to be supported by the chairman's vote. That is when there is a majority. And I said very early on, I do not think the chairman has an appetite to dismiss anybody. I hope that changes. I hope when we go back now, that position will change.
Interesting. It's how fast the tail has wagged the dog.
The declaration, the purported declaration of Mingo that was signed by
there are two.
Miss
There
Lawrence.
are two of them. One by Miss Lawrence and one with Carl Joseph.
Interesting.
Miss Joseph. Was there anything inherently wrong with Miss Lawrence's signing that declaration?
Yes, of course, because the Arrow's declaration, there is no provision for any counting agent, observer, whoever it is, to witness. It's a Form 24. It's a statutory form that is submitted to the CEO. There is no provision for anybody to go signing that. The thing is that Miss Lawrence signing it is saying, I sat down there and punctured this thing with this man and this is right. Well, perhaps she did, but she should not have been there. But from what I know, from what I understand, that all of this is what sometimes you have to laugh before you get angry and you can't do anything about it. When that man read off that thing, I think he was reading it from that thing that was already signed. And that's why I'm saying he doesn't have that capacity to do this on his own. And I will go a bit further. Mr. Lowenfield produced to the commission 4 different sets of figures. He gave us the correct numbers from the report. And then he gave us what is purportedly his report on the observation reports, his summary. And he went ahead and gave us all kinds of analysis. And he gave us a set of numbers based on his reasoning that if there was an allegation that one person voted in this box who wasn't supposed to vote, for whatever reason, that the person had died, the person got whatever, which they call it now, that every single ballot in that box could not, was bad, was invalid. And so took away all of that. And then he gave us a set of numbers which showed that the PNC got 2/3 majority and been Region 6 and all kinds. That was the second set. And then, after the Court of Appeal decision, which he said he listened to, he went and he brought us another set of numbers, which instead of subtracting 275,000 odd votes, now subtracted 115,000 odd votes. And said those were now the valid votes without giving a reason how he got them.
Right.
But when he brought, that was the third set. And then the fourth set was what he decided to bring that now added on 15 or how many other thousand votes to the recount numbers. So the totals became more and nobody knows where he got those from. But what was very interesting in that last set was that Lowenfield gave the same number of regional seats, the same number of National Geographic seats, the correct number as for the recount numbers to these people, but manipulated the total in such a way that instead of the PPPC getting 33 total seats and the APNU getting 31, he switched that around. And APNU got the 33 and PPC got the 31, and the joint, they still had the one. Now, for somebody to do that, they got to have mathematical skills. And Lowenfield does not have that. That is not something, and that thing was done in such a short while. It didn't take him weeks, it took him 2 days or something. That was not Lowenfield's calculation. The thing is, and that's why I'm saying, holding Lowenfield and Mingo and Miss Marshall and Miss Duncan and the one is Marshall, Miller and one named February and so on. Holding that's the people, the real architects of this treasonous act. And
right.
not these people.
But
they
unfortunately, yeah,
they
unfortunately, yes, indeed.
You want to call some
But
names?
unfortunately, I mean, it would be a matter of the direct manipulation, right? Because if they're the ones that directly manipulated the numbers and presented the fraudulent numbers to you.
Yeah, I know. They're the actors. They did what, and of course they have to be held accountable.
Yeah.
They have to be held accountable, and I'm going to hold them accountable.
Right.
But as a thinker, I have been a teacher for years. I've been a maths teacher for years. I look at students, dull ones, bright ones, you know, and you can say, oh yeah, this is not your thing. Somebody wrote it for you.
Right.
I don't know who did, and I can't go find that person. But I can tell you it's not your work. But you put it in, so therefore you wouldn't be punished for it. You know, that kind of.
Of course. Of course. Commissioner, as a two things. One is, as a commissioner, would you have been in the seat as a commissioner when Lowenfield and Myers were employed as CEO and DCEO? And secondly, as a politician, take off your commissioner's cap, as a politician, do you think that Granger was fully aware of all the machinations and this rig?
I think Granger engineered it all. But that aside. Okay. Lowenfield was appointed CEO before I arrived here. This was Dr. Surge Valley's doing.
Okay, yeah.
Dr. Surajbali had a young man by the name of Vishnu Prasad, who was first employed as his PRO and then served as a training officer and then served as DCU.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when Dr. Surajbali resigned, and there was a period when there was no chairman, so there was no commission meeting. There are several people whose contracts came to an end, not Lowenfield. Lowenfield's contract had been, and so Lowenfield's contract was coming to an end later on. But Vishnu Prasad's contract has come to an end, and some others, 4, I think, of the managers. So when Patterson was infamously employed, we had to advertise and we had interviews. We interviewed for a legal officer, other things, IT manager, and those went well. We scored. We had 4 or how many other commissioners interviewing, scoring, and then aggregating and getting averages. And the person with the highest ranking was normally recommended, and the commission accepted and offered the position to. When it came to the legal officer interview, that Saturday morning we were holding an interview, and the chairman came. Patterson came to sit in at the interview. What I understood later was he had this preference for who he wanted as a legal officer.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the other commissioners were prepped. And so, in order to get a high average, if you give a high number, even though the person does not. And so the legal officer who was appointed was the one that Patterson wanted. So that's all right. So that's it. Now the DCU, Vishnu Prasad applied. We advised him to, because his contract had come to an end, and so you had to get so vacancy was there. And he was interviewed. Roxanne Myers was interviewed too, and several other people. Scores were a thing and rank, and Vishnu Prasad had the highest rank. So that is where now the interviewing committee decided that they were not going to recommend Vishnu Prasad. And that is when Alexander started to slander and so on Vishnu Prasad, to say that when he was first appointed, he didn't have a degree and he was lying and he cheated and talk all these things. And that's the reason why that judge awarded damages against him. But he started that. And he never stopped. Mm-hmm. So when we went to now report to the whole commission the results of the interview and the thing, now the commission would have to make a decision, because some of us are recommending that this is the scoring and this is the man. And the other side, the other 2 on the other side, there were 2 from them, 2 from us on the thing. The other 2 are saying no, they don't agree that he is not qualified, this thing. And then they started to look for transcripts as who got more A's on master's degree and which university and stuff. And I mean, somebody might get an A and somebody might get a B, but the B was on election related matters and the A was on English language, for God's sake. So, the whole thing was different. But nevertheless, the chairman took 2 weeks or whatever it is, and then he came back and he said his decision was that Vishnu Prasad was shady and he whatever. And so Roxanne Myers. So that was a decision. And it wasn't made by Patterson by himself. He had to be advised who he must appoint. This thing, you got to understand, it forces the third work.
Correct. Well, we did say, I must tell you this, both Leonard and I, we did say on radio and television that, can we imagine if Patterson was still the chairman, if the court, CCJ, didn't rule the way it did? What would have been Guyana's shape today?
Of course.
Yeah, well, Commissioner, Leonard, you want to go?
No, I was about to ask her the same thing. Maybe you want to hazard a guess. Yeah, if the good commissioner would have hazarded a guess if Mr. Patterson would have been there. And I think we know what the answer would be here. But tonight has been a very good night, a good history lesson from a maths teacher. And
it has been.
And I want to ask you a question. What are your thoughts as a magistrate of 31 greater than 33? And I'm not saying 32 here.
You know, I made that public all about on Facebook. I taught people that when you wanted to find half of something, when you wanted to think, you add 1 and divide by 2. So you add 1 to 65, divide by 2, you get 33. That's the majority.
But
I don't
let's-
know anything but half men and half women. And I taught maths for 35 years.
Oh my goodness. But this has
Commissioner,
been
it's been a
explosive.
pleasure to have you here. Here is my final question for you, if you don't mind, Commissioner. Do you think, did you on July 25th, let us say, did Commissioner Bibi Shadick had a doubt that the rig might be successful, or
No.
did you always
No,
think that
if
this
I
thing
ever
is gonna
had
come to an
such
end?
doubts, if I ever had such doubts, I would not have fought as hard as I did. The thing is that we were finding out at every stage, and we were countering it at every stage. There were times when it was frustrating and it was irritating, and you got angry that this position that you have was not being appreciated and all of that. But no, I never gave up, and I never thought that. I refused to accept that could happen. Not in this day and age.
And Yogi, if I may ask a
Because
good
it
teacher.
was not a
Great.
rig. Again, I'm
Commission-
saying it was not a rig.
Uh-huh. Yogi, if I may ask a good teacher,
Gotcha.
would Guyana,
Leonard?
do you believe, Commissioner, that Guyana would ever know who the real authors, other than the politician, whether they could have been maybe business people and so that was involved in this naked attempt to rig?
I can tell you, the truth always comes out, no matter how long.
You want to give us some names?
It will come out. No matter how long.
It will
I had to push it.
Commissioner, Commissioner, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and we are always, room 592 is always available to have your discussion to the public
Well, you
as
can
to what
always
transpires.
you
as
can
we
always call if you would like to have.
Great. Great.
Okay.
We will
All
do
right.
so. We will do so.
I was
Thank
hoping
you so
that
much, Commissioner, for being here.
I wonder if she ever used to beat children when she was teaching. I don't know.
Yes, I did.
You did? Ah.
Yeah, I did. And when they saw that I could have done it, they never did anything to have to be flogged.
All right, Yog.
Great. Well, thank you so thank you so much, Commissioner. We are proud of the fight that you upheld there on behalf of all of Guyana. We remain proud, and we want to say thank you again. Ladies and
And
gentlemen,
I'm
it's
happy
been a
to
pleasure
be
to
able
have
to
you
be
join.
there to do it for the land.
Thank you very much.
Great. Ladies and
Have a good
gentlemen,
evening.
it's been good to have you all join us here in room 592. It's been a pleasure to have Commissioner Bibi Shadick with us, and we have had quite some new information released to us here tonight. I'm sure Leonard is going to put his pen to paper very, very soon to get some articles out. But Leonard, it's been a pleasure to be here with you and Miss Bibi Shadick here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you all. Wherever you have joined us from, do have a safe and good evening. And remember to say a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. It is still the best place on this planet. Do be safe. Bye-bye now.